Good afternoon. So I'm coming at you from my bed because I'm too lazy to get up. And I don't know, it's a vibe. So I'm just going to try and make this video really quick. Lord, help me make this video. Um, Again, I'm teetering on a concept, but don't quite have it fully formed yet. But I want to make the video more than I want to complete my outline. So here I go. First off, let me just say that as far as the current end time situation, which I have tried to sort of steer clear of lately, uh, just so that I can survive day to day, because uh, it just trying to watch a pot boil is actually quite difficult, and I thought I could do it. And for a whole year, I was doing it. And then I was like, yeah, no, this is driving me insane. So I haven't really been paying attention to like little everyday developments, but I recently like just jumped back into that pool, and y'all, it's getting close. I mean, it's like, so I just said that to say, like, I think part of my desire to get this up is just from like trying to get any and all things that are inside of me out and having nothing left over and being ready. So yeah. So anyway, I started thinking about like I started watching these debates and getting these videos about logical fallacies and science and just that whole business. And I think I was listening to a Muslim guy, and he was debating somebody, and the question in the debate was how was how if Jesus died on the cross and was dead for 3 days, and if Jesus is God, who was running the world while he was dead? And I mean, when you hear a question like that, it's just kind of like, why are you making me debate this? It's stupid. But like, the guy that whoever the guy was that was debating, like, caught on right away and was like, yeah, um, you're using a logical fallacy called false dilemma, where you're making something be a dilemma that isn't, uh, so that you can, uh, I forget why he said the whole thing, but yeah, as soon as he said the word false dilemma, I was like, yeah, that's definitely what that is. I didn't have the words for it, but that's what I was thinking when he was describing that. I was like, that's exhausting to try and. I don't know if that's like the same thing that little kids do when they ask you questions and you're just like, just go to bed. Like, you can't even start on the question because it's like they're not doing it on purpose because they're little and they don't understand like that certain things don't matter. But when you're a grown man, you're doing that on purpose. Or I don't know. I mean, part of it is like, well, if you're a Muslim and you've never had the revelation, I mean, a lot of this is spiritual. So maybe you really are confused and think that that the world was shut down while Jesus was dead. Like, I don't know. Or like, how can God run the world? Whatever. So basically, he didn't really go far into like explaining exactly what happened. He just gave the provision of God the Father still being, in play, and the Holy Spirit. So there was enough God still running that if Jesus was out for 3 days, it would have been fine. But it got me on this whole thing about logical fallacies. And so I was like, I'm going to look up all the logical fallacies, which I've done on occasion in my life. But I clicked on one and I kind of started to notice that I had never heard of these before. Like, I don't know. I think I remember taking sort of a speech and rhetoric class or something like in college, and having that logical fallacies list, and maybe it was a dozen, maybe 15 of them or something. And there's a lot. Some of them are on there that are still there. Straw man, appeal to authority, all of these different things. But then I started to notice like there's all these different. It was like they had added to the list, and I was like, do you really feel comfortable adding to like 1,000-year-old list of logical fallacies? Like, isn't this all from the Greeks? Like, isn't this all like Plato or Socrates or whoever one of them dudes was? Like, and you're just adding willy nilly like the same amount of terms that there were. You're adding the exact same amount in the last like 50 years. Like, that seems kind of sketch. And like every single one was kind of like, it was real particular. Like some of the things I didn't really even consider fallacies. Like one of them was like the etymology fallacy. That was like uh, the fallacy that the original meaning of a word, like a word can't go beyond its original meaning, or the original meaning is the right meaning, or something like that. And it was like, well, no, that's not. I mean, if you're using it in disingenuous, like, then yeah, I can see that, but I don't know why you would call that a logical fallacy. So the list started getting kind of sketched to me, and I was like, there's something off about this idea of logical fallacies. And then like I left a comment, and I was like, after it had been like 20 minutes of just a constant rattling off of fallacies, and there were so many, and some of them were like calling ones that were legitimate like illegitimate. I mean, if you call it a logical fallacy, then that means that you can't use it's like personal anecdote fallacy. It's like you're only one person. What are you supposed to do? You're not supposed to be like, well, I smoked every day for 40 years and I'm fine. I don't have any cancer. It's like that's a pretty compelling argument, which is why people use it. Like that, maybe it doesn't have to be like the strongest. Like, no, yeah, don't hinge your entire, like the heart association probably shouldn't use that one, but to say that it's a logical fallacy and it's just not. So then I was like, in the comments I put, uh wouldn't it be easier to just put the logical non-fallacies? Like, why do we have 80 fallacies? And like, also, why are there 80? Why is there so many fallacies in arguments? Like, what's that even about? Like, maybe we should like go a little bit bigger picture here and figure out, why is everybody lying about to get their point? Like, so because I looked up the word fallacy, the etymology, because I don't care, because that's what you're supposed to do. And yes, I know, I understand how we use it today, but that's the thing. The word becomes sort of meaningless after a while, and it just becomes this buzzword that you're supposed to say and put in that place, and you kind of understand what it means. But when you really want to get an anchor on how this word came to be, what they were trying to convey with it, you go and look in the etymology. That's not a fallacy. It was just like weird. So, but anyway, the etymology of the word fallacy is deception and false statement. And I don't think that people are purposely trying to deceive necessarily when they're using a fallacy, but a lot of it is like a knee jerk thing. Like one of the fallacies is like when you you try to tell somebody to calm down, like when you're giving your side of the argument, they're like, hey, first of all, calm down, like you're being really whatever, like it's like that has nothing, what does that have to do with the argument, which is one of these newfangled ones that got added. And I think um just the current state of our world being as deceptive and um I don't know, it's been so much time trying to deceive and skew information and propagandized to high heaven that you have to add new logical fallacies to the category. But I don't even think those count. It's like that they don't even deserve to be called that. That's just somebody doing a flim flam on you, like trying to add all of that to a dictionary would take forever. But something like that, where you're making fun of the person doing the argument rather than the argument itself. Um, this is all a result of the fallen nature. It's a it's what when Jesus says they put a stumbling block before their own eyes. We have this thing where because you think about all of the arguing that's ever been done in life. How has there been so much arguing, and like only 0.0001% of all that arguing has ever resulted in a solution? Like, why are we so argument heavy and solution light? And it's because we don't actually want to find the answers more often than not. So we deceive ourselves, but we also don't want to admit that we aren't, that we didn't come into the argument preparing to change our minds or actually get to the bottom of a situation. So we come up with these other ways of arguing, and that, or we just end with, well, that's just my personal opinion, or well, that's been my experience. Because, and that's also just, I don't want to argue this. I don't want to, I don't love the truth more than whatever my belief is right now, but I also still want to be friends with you. And also, now I'm going to say this, it's just like all that logical fallacy list is not taking into account. It just seemed like the fallacy list itself was a fallacy because it wasn't taking into account why people even argue. Um, and then it sort of begged the question, like, okay, well, to know what logical fallacies are implies that you know the truth already and know, like, when someone is not in pursuit of it, or is veering off the track of it. And I don't think that people do. So um, I think it is a logical fallacy within itself to rely on the logical fallacy list to sort of get you anywhere in terms of truth, because um, it's really just designed to make you be a know-it-all. Like, if you have righteous motives and yeah, you really want to genuinely get down to actual information, yes, it can be a useful list so that you can identify common um, tactics, or you yourself can stay away from certain things that weaken your argument. But by and large, like, I don't think that the logical fallacy concept is strong enough to use it to hold over people's heads and to try and get any real information out of somebody. Because, as long as we are still in our same fallen state of not want of putting stumbling blocks before our eyes, like, it doesn't matter how many fallacies you identify, you're still going to be in the dark. Like, and I was thinking about arguing. Arguing in it of itself is this sort of healthy activity we do as humans. Like, if you think about, these families that get together on holidays, and not like the tense kind of arguing, but they're arguing over which David Bowie album was the greatest or whatever. It's like there's these families and friend groups that get together and they just spend hours at the table, and that's what they do. They're lifelong. That's like their main activity when they get together, is to argue. And it's kind of fun. It's kind of like when it's really not meant to, even when it is meant to. And this is like the splendor of God. It's like even when it is meant to get to the bottom of something, there's the things of God are so vast that you could spend your life arguing like some of these same things and never get to the bottom of it, but continuously getting closer and closer and closer and digging deeper and deeper and deeper and maturing in the knowledge and the understanding. Um, and that, and that's one thing. But there are just certain things that are just true. And all you got to do to come to the knowledge of the truth is believe that thing. Like I just watched a video uh, where I was looking up Josephus. I was like, I'm finna just, because I've got the book on my shelf. It's massive, and I've probably read like 1/10 of it in my life. And I was like, I'm gonna get that thing on audio and just suck it down. And I saw a couple of other videos of. I saw one that was like a clip of Josephus, like other passages where he talks about Jesus. And the very first comment on there was this long, extensive thing where uh, the guy was saying like, the Josephus, like it totally was trying to like discredit Josephus as a source on Jesus because he wasn't alive when Jesus was alive. Everything that he got was secondhand, bloobity blobbity. Then he goes on to say like, it's the same thing with the Gospels. Like no one actually wrote anything while Jesus was alive. And even Paul like argued incessantly with the disciples about, and he actually never physically met Jesus. And I'm thinking, but like he had argued with the people who did, so that like, within his argument, like he tried to tear down all of this historical information, but honestly, like going through, to me, he bolstered it more than he trying to strike off like a dozen proofs is really not as effective as it looks. It looks like you're a hater. Like to try and go down the list and discount 12 strong things that have held up Christendom for 2,000 years, and you're like in a YouTube comment section like, it's like you look ridiculous, first of all. But secondly, like I ended up leaving a comment because like obviously like a lot of people tried to enter the gauntlet with that guy and comment. And I said, as I was like processing all of that, I left a comment. I was like, you know what? All of this is really just nonsense talking, intellectual like uh, theater, because the Bible, uh, the Gospels, let's say, does more than assert that Jesus lived on the earth and was a real person. It asserts that he died, rose again, and is still alive. So these are actually the claims that you're contending with. You're contending with a claim that Jesus is still alive to this day, and that you yourself can contact him. It actually gives you the steps on what to do. So anything short of you calling on his name to see if he's real and asking him to show you that he's real is really just a bunch of theatrical nonsense. Because yeah, that if you're really just, if the Bible is completely unreliable and these are the reasons, and the gospels are completely unreliable. Well, those people died. Those people died because they said that they saw him after he died. Those initial Christians, this whole thing popped off because of the resurrection claims, not because they believed that, not because they liked him and that they liked what he was about. It was, no, this guy is God. He came back. He came back and whatever. So that's what you're really arguing. You try to tear down other people's beliefs in something is not the thing. If you say you really want to get down to the truth of it, and that's what you're genuinely after, then do the scientific method is what you need to do, and lay out, follow the steps as the Bible indicates on how to contact him, and see if it works. Anything short of that is you being playing games. You're playing games. So anybody who isn't doing that to see if he's real or not is playing games. And the reason why they're playing games is because there's a 50-50 shot that they could be wrong, that he could be real, and 50% is too high odds to bank their life on, because they had plans that they wanted to do, and they're really not trying to cancel those. And that's really what all this is about. He probably won't show up, but what if he does? Now I gotta pretend. Now I can't pretend like I don't know anymore. Now I can't have ignorance. If I genuinely am not interested at all whatsoever in this message, I'm going straight to hell, because all I had to do was show interest in the plan, the thing. I don't have to be good. I don't have to be bad. I just got to be interested. And if I'm not interested, that's my answer. There's no loopholes. There's no, well, what if, let me give you this hypothetical and this and that. Um, so I was thinking about, I was going to look up this Daniel 12:10, which is basically like at the end of Daniel where God says, seal up the words until the end. And it says, the wicked, something like the wicked will never understand. Uh, it's something about the wisdom being opened at the end, and the wicked will never understand, but the wise will understand. And I don't remember why that was so poignant to me, except for the fact that it's like the way that things are, the way that God like weeds things out is really, really scary, because then you think like, well, I don't understand. So does that make me wicked? And by and large, the answer is probably yeah. And it's really kind of scary for me anyway, because I would hate to be that person. I can't, it's hard for me to get into the mind of these people who don't understand. And you think, well, they don't understand because they don't want to or whatever. And it all centers around this concept of deserving things, which is literally like the last thing that I added to my little list here before I started this video, which is basically God talking to me. And, since my experience that I was talking about in my last video, I'm able to hear him. I'm able to like uh, hear the good things and like all the things that he says about me, because I just understand what's going on and I believe them and all that. So he was like, I was listening to some parable or something, and I think it was about the temptation, which I heard a really good video about. Like somebody had some really good insight on it, which opened up my insight on it when I was listening to it. But he said, like, he said, don't I deserve you? And I was like, I guess. But like, I don't deserve you though. I was like, you're probably right. If I'm like the bee's knees or whatever to you, but like I don't deserve you though. And he was like, what does that have to do with anything? And I was like, what does that have to do with anything? And I was like, hold up. I just stopped my video. I was like, hold up. What does that have to do with anything? Why does it matter what I deserve? And I was like, oh my gosh, it goes back to that whole thing about hell. And like, because we feel comfortable if people are in hell because they did something to deserve to be there, and that makes us comfortable. So then we make the inverse true, where we have to deserve something to be in heaven. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this thing is everywhere. Like this deserving thing. It's like if God created you, then that's the end of the thing. Like, um, that shouldn't be able to override, like deserving something shouldn't be able to override like God creating you for a purpose. Like you should just be like, that's just what it is. And so then I was like, well, let me go back. So it's like, let me go in the word. And I looked up the word deserve. And it only pops up like 25 times, like 25, 30 times. And which didn't surprise me at all because I was like, yeah, we're real low on this low on this concept of deserving. Like it's really hard to grasp because it's really like not in there. Not as much as some other concepts. And so and then I started to go through and see like what it was pertaining to, and a lot of it was just pertaining, it was never like God talking. I think there was maybe one time where God was saying something like you'll receive the punishment as your sins deserve, and something in one of the prophets. But everything else was just other men talking about what other men deserve and this and that. Fine. Psalms was heavy on the deserve, as you can imagine. And then the only other time where God himself is talking about what people deserve is in the parable about the wedding feast. And Jesus says, he was like, those that I invited did not deserve to come. Why didn't they deserve to come? Because they turned down the invitation. That's literally the only reason. That's literally the only reason. So even we see in scripture that the scripture agrees with me that there's nothing you can do to deserve heaven. Like we switched it because we don't like the idea of that there's nothing that we can do to deserve hell. That sounds crazy. But you have to be able to trust that God is not going to put anybody in hell that isn't supposed to be there. Like you got to be willing to let people go into heaven for free. Like don't make the cost of heaven inflate just because you don't want you don't want to feel bad, you don't want to be like it's about your own conscience. Like I'm just thinking about people in mass. Like none of this applies to me because I'm fine. But like people in mass, they don't want to worship God if they find out, they don't want to find out something bad about God. They don't want to find out that there's people in hell that they would object to being there. But when you think about it, like that would have to be true. Like I would have to accept that if God is this other person, just literally just being another person that's not me, there are some decisions that he is going to make that I'm going to disagree about. And yeah, maybe he at some point can show me and I go, oh, that makes sense. But when is that going to be? Like the Bible is enough. Like you're supposed to be able to use the Bible to observe him, his character, and see why he makes decisions so that you can better understand the things that are happening in your world at this time, because it's very, very hard to understand God in the present moment. Like, the Bible gives you the passage, the long passages of time, so that you can see why certain decisions had to be made, so that you can go like make predictions about your current situation. So, but yeah, like, if we were to see some of the people that were in hell, it's like, well, why did he deserve to go? It's just like that guy that came up with that hypothetical where, a girl gets raped and the rapist asks for forgiveness and accepts Christ and he gets to go, but the girl, like, holds on to bitterness and she doesn't accept Christ and she does not get to go. It's like, um, yeah, I mean, I get it, because I'm just thinking, like, God made this a small thing. He made this, like, it's like, if you're about to go get accepted to the most amazing country, the citizenship of the most amazing country, and like, you get to be a citizen and everything is yours, and you get there and it's customs and you go through the whatever, and it's big, intimidating metal detectors, whatever, and the consulate and this and that, and then you get there and they're like, okay, this is the test, and they literally like put a little limbo stick down on the ground, and they're like, if you can jump over this, you can make it in. Like, that's amazing. And you would think, like, well, you're going to let too many people in that are crazy. Like, and that's what we do. That's what, the religious do, the spirit does. But at the same time, if you couldn't bother to lift your leg, if you couldn't bother to lift your leg to go over the stick, then no, you absolutely positively do not deserve to be in this country. And that might seem like a weird criteria, but it's like, God, this isn't like, it's not a country though. It's not like we need the best and the brightest to build our country. It's like God created all of us and he loves us all. What better proof is like, here's the criterion. Because he has to have criterion, because he's God. He's got some standards, okay? So he's got to have some criterion. But he went out of his way to make the criterion as low as possible because he knows that you're all a hot mess. So, yeah, no, you don't get to go. If you couldn't, he's like, just stick out your tongue and sing the first line of the Star Spangled Banner. But I don't know the Star Spangled Banner. Okay, it goes like this. I don't know. It just doesn't seem like, I mean, it's like, I don't, like, be honest. You actually don't love God and his stuff, and that's why you didn't make it. Like, you actually don't love God. You don't love his stuff. You love your own stuff. You don't want to do God's stuff. And it seems boring. And that's why you're not interested. And people make these big, huge things like, oh, well, I have lupus, so I couldn't do the jump. It's like, you don't want to make it seem like you're not a good person. It's just like when that guy that goes to colleges and he argues with atheists, and they get all riled up and they're ready to uh, sort of publicly slam the idea of God, and they can't wait to do it. But then they get up there and Frank Turek is like, if you could know for sure that Christianity is true, that God is real, would you become a Christian? Well, me personally, I just, it's for me. I don't know that I would. Because, okay, then that's what it is. Then shut up. This has nothing to do with your moral outrage. This has nothing to do with you having real gripes with right and wrong and whatever, because you're just so morally, ugh. If you knew 100% for sure, which is supposedly what this debate is about, Well, how do you know this? Oh, how can we rely on? Okay, if you knew 100%, like, let's cut through all the bull. Let's get to the end. If you knew it was true, would you follow it? Well, me, I don't. So you wouldn't, because you don't actually care. You don't actually care. You actually don't. You're not interested. You don't want to be told what to do, and you don't want to adhere. You want to do whatever. You don't even know what goofball things you want to do, but you want to be have the freedom to do it when it arises. Like, that's literally what we're talking about. And I mean, it's upsetting, but it is what it is. And like that passage, when I was reading that passage about, the wicked will not understand, and I think about these churches where these people, they they get saved, and I'm talking about a single concept is like pulling teeth. They cannot get it. They cannot get it. And I just wonder, like, this doesn't mean like that we're going to be able to there's just going to be a fine line. It's like the wicked live on this side of the tracks and the righteous live on the other side of the tracks, and they'll never be able to get it and we will. And it's like segregation. It's like, no, it's all mixed together. I mean, there's just some people in church that they talk and it's like, are you even interested in Jesus or God or like whatever? Like, they think that, to escape punishment, it's worth it. Like, if they can be assured of escaping punishment, but it's really not enough. It's really not enough. And I mean, for some people it kind of is, but it's like those people, the people where they just want to escape punishment, they're like, that is a thing. That is a designation, I believe. And you can be indebted to God for the escape and devote your life to him because of that. But a lot of people, there's just some people, most people, let's be honest, that are just wicked. And that verse made me like look back at these things where people are just like, I just don't understand. Like, you're at the Bible study, you're trying, like, you got 8 people trying to explain to them, and they're just like, I just don't. And it's like, okay. And you wonder, I don't know, like, if I were to look up where those people are today, like, I wonder what would be going on. Maybe they would still be, who knows, but God, God's going to sort that all out. But let's see, I'm at 37 minutes. um yeah, so I didn't really like the fallacy thing, kind of got a life of its own, but that was just one of a couple of things that I was thinking of, because I was also thinking about, like, um just the way that so-called scientific conversations are even conducted today. Like, everything is falling apart, by the way, BT dubs. I mean, that's why Jesus is just coming back like any minute, because um, people are done with actual real logic, and like, it's been eroding for a long time. I mean, there's teachers in the 80s that would be talking like how I'm talking. So it's been eroding for a long time. But the way that the wicked, the people that follow Satan, and they're a creation of God, but they're satisfied just going through the motions instead of doing the actual being actually connected to God. It's like, how about we just stay unconnected to God and we make a facsimile thing? And so it's really strange and weird. But I think about, like, how scientific things are approached, or like real true things are approached, real true phenomenon. And it's really like just sketchy and sad. And I got this picture in my mind of, like, if scientists could literally go back to the time of Jesus, like, just get in a time machine and go see Jesus do a miracle, like, feed the 5,000 or whatever. And they'd go back with their equipment and they would just be like, oh yeah, you could see like with the infrared, like we put the infrared on the whatever, and we see there's a burst of energy. And they would really think that, like, they would try to use that, all of that language and all of that technical whatever, to sort of write off the miracle, because they could see the miracle taking place. It's like, oh, we slowed down the photons to whatever, and we saw the moment that it's like, okay, but it still happened though. Like, they just it's this overconfidence in the science. It's like, because the science can't explain it, it is higher than the actual thing that can do it. Like, I don't know if that makes sense. It's just another one of those things of people choosing the creation over the creator, because like, science, or the things that science observes, is all creation. They're observing creation. So their ability to observe it, manipulate it, and predict it, and all these things, like, they way prefer that over the creator himself, because the creator himself smited some people, and that's unpredictable. So let's just leave that guy alone. And like, the way that they think that this is just going to go on forever like this, I don't know. That didn't really come out how I was initially thinking of it. And then I heard a really interesting, like, short that just, like, rattled off something, and it was like, hey, yeah, is there even enough decomposing material in the earth to account for millions of years of evolution? Like, even if you just say, like, because they like to stretch out the human timeline to, like, oh, the first humans 100,000 years ago, or whatever. It's like, is there enough bodies, enough skulls? Like, that seems like it gets super full. Like, just to me, like, once you start researching these theories, uh, and like something like flat Earth, like, it really, like, helps you not be so taken in by, like, every single thing someone says, um, and just go, and you just look around at your world and you go, I don't think I don't see this thing. Like, nature, maybe trees and things like that. I can see, like, ancient trees or whatever. Even that is like thousands of years is really pushing it. And we probably don't have that many of those left, because we'd be cutting stuff down. But like a million years old tree, even like a million years old mountain, like, this stuff is shifting in our lifetimes. For it to go from being completely dormant for millions of years, and then for us to be able to see shifts in our lifetimes, that's like a crazy, like, they should be looking for some supernatural phenomenon to be taking place at any moment. If that, like, that's a long time for people to be buried. And yeah, you can see remains for a while, but not for that long. Like, ain't no million-year-old fossils. There just isn't. Like, so, but somebody said, like, the current model, like, the if you account for all the decomposing material in the earth now, and all the unearthed things that we've found and all that stuff, it fits a young earth model. It fits 6,000-ish years of human living. uh and we haven't uncovered like half of it. So we would just be overrun with stuff, like, if this was as old as it is. And part, like, it's that same thing, like, I always talk about how the lie is not meant to last forever. It's just supposed to last only so long to get you to veer off and not believe in anything God related. Like, I watched this video a long time ago about this guy who was an ex Satanist, and he actually became like a Seventh Day Adventist or something. But he was dropping some jewels, and one of the things that he said is like he just was talking about how uh, the Satanists had gotten together. This is like part of their lore or something. Hundreds of years ago, and they were like, it's time to go underground fully and to just disavow knowledge of there was a planned time to go underground and just not do the spiritual thing anymore. And that was part of the rise. Part of that was the rise of evolution right after that. And so they changed the strategy, and it was about like not having doing the gods thing and the supernatural psychic mediums and witch doctors and this and that. Obviously, we can still see where there's pockets of that in the world, but by and large, the ones that got together where there was enough society to do that, that was a theory. And so that's something like, I don't know, I saw that maybe 10, 12 years ago, and that's something that I always kept in mind. And uh, it was constantly reinforced by society. So I always thought about that. Well, I guess it's like recirculating. And my husband like brought it up. He was like, "Yeah, there's this guy. I saw this clip, and he said that yeah, they had the Satanists had a meeting." And I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah," because I knew where he was going, because I knew what he was talking about. And he was like, "Yeah, they said because um, that it was like the devil had decided to go underground because technology was starting to like pick up a lot, and soon like they were going to be, they needed to go underground because it was like people are going to be able to communicate super fast." And I was like, I did not remember that at all as part of it. I was like, what? So it was like, oh my gosh, like I just thought, so for this all this time I thought he just had like this super cool plan that he was like waiting till I got closer to the end to sort of implement this plan. And come to find out, like uh it's like the technology, like the men were catching up to him. It was men, it was the printing press, it was all these things. It was like these things that were going to start happening, and they couldn't corroborate the stories. You could be in your little village, your Satanist witch, whatever, in your little village saying nonsense, and nobody's going to like question you on it. But like if technology got to the point where people were starting to get more connected and people could start comparing notes, it was like, okay, this system doesn't work anymore. We got to go underground and do something different. Like I was just like that. Cuss word, cuss word, cuss word. Um, yeah, that's just something that like that blew my mind. But yeah, I think that's all I had to say about that. But yeah, the logical fallacy thing was blowing my mind. I did actually hear something really good though that I got from one of those. I guess he's like a professor, or like a rhetoric professor, whatever. But he said a valid argument is something that might have a factually incorrect premise, but there's no logical contradictions in it. So that is a valid argument. And a sound argument is a valid argument with a true premise. So I don't know if that's like super complicated sounding, but basically like um when you say, when somebody goes, he's got a point, or he has a valid argument, it's like the way that they argue that was free of contradictions, so it was well argued. But maybe this information isn't verified or known or correct or whatever, but it's worth talking about. But a sound argument is a valid argument that has a completely true premise. And so that, I don't know, he didn't really expound on that, but I was just sort of imagining that, um, you know, the most of the truths that we agree on as humans, humanity or whatever, is based on sound arguments. Um, these things that go unquestioned virtually. But and I can see like how like that's a way to get truth sort of up to the top, or whatever. It's like the way that we test information. But like that only works for things that are material and can be like tested, and or yeah, things that can be tested and proven. So why are we doing this with spiritual matters? Like, why are we doing this argument hullabaloo for things that are invisible? The only thing that you can do is test it out. Like I was saying about leaving that comment, and I was like, all of this arguing and all of this, is it real? Are these documents from the time of Christ? Like all of that is whatever. Like, get to the point. Like, are we going to see a miracle or not? Stretch your hand out. Let's start praying. Let's start asking God to show up. That's the only thing that can be done. And guess what Jesus told them to do? Go out, go ye into all the world, preach the gospel, and argue everyone to death? No. Do the miracles, raise the dead, heal the sick, cleanse the leper. Like, this is already the way that we keep like going around and round in circles with this stuff. And that's part of the devil, like being able to, because we don't quite understand why God tells us to do stuff, and He knows that, so He just has us doing Bugs Bunny cartoon stuff, like I'm always saying, before we wake up and realize, like, wait a minute, like this has nothing to do. So we argue with people about this and that and the Holocaust and whatever, and it's like, bro, do you want to see something? Do you want to know if God is real or not? Would you like His spirit to live on the inside of you? Like, yes, it's a yes or no. Like, all of this, I mean, apologetics is great, but it's just not reliable anymore. People aren't even, look how people are testing their own stuff in their own life. Literally nothing else in life is coming up under the same scrutiny as your faith, which should tell you something. It should tell you they actually don't have any plans to accept what you're talking about. They're going to just go, well, how do you know that it's real? How do you know, though? Meanwhile, they're literally just accepting what anybody tells them over internet, over a chat. Like, they're not using this level of scrutiny on anything else. All the other religions we all know, they all don't, nobody thinks that Shiva is real. Nobody thinks that any of those other religions are doing something real. They're not going up to Muslims going, how do you know, though, that this is real? They're just doing it for you because they want you to shut up. It has nothing to do with them actually genuinely being curious. But I fall victim to it too, because I want to talk about God. So I'm thinking people really want to know, and really, they might end up in a real situation that they didn't plan on being on. But by and large, like, people need proof. So we need to get our faith up. We need to get ready to perform some miracles in the name of Jesus and bind some devils and get people free, because all this arguing ain't gonna do it, and it hasn't been it for a while. It definitely is not now, especially in these days. So, well, anyway, I feel like that's a good time to stop blabbing. So I am going to stop here, and I will talk to y'all later.